Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Making a Difference here on Buzz TV. I'm your host, Wayne Veldsman. Today, excited to introduce to you our guest, Mr. Sam Mitchell of Autism Rocks and Rolls Corporation. Sam is a change-making entrepreneur, motivational speaker, and the actual executive director of his nonprofit. Let's bring him in. Super excited. Sam, how are you?
Hey, brother, it's good to be here, and thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. Why don't we start off? Tell everybody a little bit about what you're working on these days.
So, hello, everyone. My name is Sam Mitchell. I run the podcast Autism Rocks and Rolls, and it is about autism and how we cope with daily struggles that you may or may not understand. I've ran it since October 2019. I've had big guests on the show, such as Dr. Temple Grandin and professional wrestler Mick Foley, and I have 11K downloads. But through the podcast, I was able to have a nonprofit. I have a board of 5, and I'm a motivational speaker. I've spoken in Orlando, Florida, Niagara Falls, Canada, and Broken Arrows, Oklahoma, and I've done some virtual events as well.
Wow, nice, man. That's super impressive. So you're working with people. I saw on your website you said you're a voice for those on the spectrum. Tell me a little bit what made you decide to sort of get into this space and be that voice?
Well, it's coming from a man with high functioning autism himself. So that's the first part right there. But the second part is I fell in love with podcasting after I joined my high school's media club. And ever since then, I fell in love with it. And I decided to do something good for the world and good for the community by starting a podcast, because I always wanted to help them in some way or form. But I unfortunately never got that opportunity until the year 2020. Oh, gosh, dang it.
2018.
No, 2019.
Hey, all good, man. Like all the years run together, especially after the pandemic just now, right? I feel like years just disappeared in a flash. And so, obviously high functioning on the spectrum yourself, and then you got into it through your media class. What do you think is now the way, right? You run a podcast, you're a coach, you're a speaker. How do you personally feel like you're making the biggest difference right now in the world?
Well, it's kind of like what you said. I'm being a voice for those on the spectrum and a voice for those who cannot speak. Because, in all honesty, I think that there are a lot of podcasts out there that are doctor podcasts that talk about autism, and they're great. We had help through the doctors, and they did so much for us. But I don't think doctors sometimes understand the reason, and that's where I come in.
The reason. What do you mean by the reason? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, sure, I can try. So the reason why we act these certain ways, and there's not just a neurological way, there's kind of a logical way too. So, for example, there's a reason why I have meltdowns. There's too much noise going on. There's a reason why I'm so blunt. It's because simple. I was told to tell the truth, and that's the way I'm raised. But you're telling me to lie? In my eyes, you're being condescending. So those are a couple of examples for you.
Beautiful. I appreciate it. One thing that I noticed that really stuck out to me online was you said we should all be tapping into our abilities rather than pointing out what people cannot do. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I do believe that humans sometimes are more looking at what we cannot do. I think we need to turn a 180 and shift that into what we can do, because if you look at the bigger bubble, I see there are more talents than more weaknesses.
Yeah. Beautiful. More talents than weaknesses. Let's make that 180 shift. Start looking at what we can do versus what we can't do. Awesome. Sam, hey, thank you so much for being on today on the Short Podcast. I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you, man.
Not a problemo. You ever want me back to, give me a holler, and thank you for having me on.
I definitely will. To everybody out there, if you want to learn more about Sam and Autism Rocks and Rolls Corporation, visit us over at iwantabuzz.com. Until next time, you've been listening to Making a Difference. We'll see you soon.